moved on to after the quiz, I want to talk a little bit about this IA that we have looming. So remember, the IA is this project that we're going to do during this first semester. It's going to culminate with a written paper. That written paper is going to serve as your final exam grade for the course. Typically, that's due shortly after Thanksgiving break, so I have enough time to do all the grading and have scores to go in before exam week. Just giving you some time frames here. So a lot of this we'll do in class. So there's a bunch of pieces that I'm going to have you turn into me kind of as milestones along the way. They'll count as like quiz scores or quiz points. Now I'm going to be mean about grading these things. So like, do a good job on them. Don't just like, I'm just going to scribble some stuff down on a sheet of paper and turn this in like it's a homework grade that the school just needs to have me fill in. Like, I want you to do well. So the idea here, what we're going to do is we're going to be studying the relationship between two quantitative variables. So you guys are going to choose two quantitative variables and try to determine if there's a cause and effect relationship between the two variables. So like an example that could not be used, like I would not approve it, but maybe the relationship could be between GPA and ACT score, with the assumption that you're getting the better your GPA, the higher your ACT score should be. Everybody's okay with that idea? Now that's one that I will not approve, as I'm using it as an example, so don't send that in as your idea. Now these things are entirely up to you, but we need to have quantitative variables, so they have to be numbers. They can't be colors or favorite songs or genre of music or something like that. And again, I'm going to require that the pair of variables you're looking at are not too similar to what someone else is already doing. So you're going to send in submissions here. I'll talk about how to do that. And it's a first come, first serve. After I approve it, I'll have a Google Sheet that I'll just be updating what people's topics are. Everybody's okay with that? So when you're thinking about topics, you need to also consider measurability. So many students pick their topics, and how they measure them is with a survey to their classmates. Some students, though, will pick their variables and go and find a data set on the internet to use. So like Isaac Kanja last year looked at, Major League Baseball player running speed and number of stolen bases as his project. And he found an online database that had like every current Major League Baseball player's, like running speed and their stolen bases for that current season. And that's what he used as his data set. So he pulled that all from the internet, didn't have to really collect anything from individuals. Either route's going to be okay, but you should be thinking about, where am I going to get this data from when you start choosing your variables? I think someone in the past wanted to do like hours in sunlight and like inches grown for plants. And I'm like, are you going to grow a bunch of plants yourself? How are you going to collect this data? And they're like, oh, never mind that. Like, okay. So just make sure you're thinking about like how you're going to get that data. Okay. So again, the topic or the data you're going to need to collect needs to be a reasonably large amount. So like, I can help facilitate that for you guys. I have lots of seniors, and I can certainly have them help fill out your surveys if you go the survey route. But typically we're looking for, 70 data points or so is usually a pretty safe number that the statistics should work out pretty good. The more data you have, usually the better. So of these milestones along the way that we're going to do, the first one is going to be your topic submission. So again, the topics need to be approved by me. They'll come on a first come, first served basis. I recommend often that you submit, like multiple ideas in case the one, your first choice is already taken. That way you don't go to the bottom of the stack, when you realize a day or two later, once I finally get a chance to read through it and I'm like, ooh, someone else already took this, try again. And now there's like 15 people have already chosen a project. And you're like, oh, there's not, I don't have any good ideas left here, and it's harder. So in your submission, you need to list your two variables. You need to identify those two variables as independent and dependent. Remember, the independent variable is the cause, the dependent variable is the effect. So if we're talking about GPA and ACT score, the likely argument would be that because you've studied a lot and you've gotten good grades in school, you're well prepared for the test. The independent variable is your GPA, and the dependent variable would be the ACT, that your study habits are causing this higher test score. In addition to that, you need to write a few sentences describing what you intend to prove, and then also I'd like a paragraph detailing why this topic is important to you. And it could be something as hey, I'm a senior, I'm getting ready to apply for colleges, my blah, blah, blah isn't that great, but, my GPA is not that great, but my test score are really good. I think it's the GPA might be an unfair representation. I want to show that there's really, that maybe the test score is the better relationship here or the better indicator for me, because, I'm going to show that there's not really a good relationship between GPA and test score, was something like that. So try to make it personal as best you can, or why it's important, for everybody, to a person in general, why what you're doing is important. So maybe you look at a data set and you're looking at poverty rates, based on tax percentage. I don't know, something that has an appeal beyond just yourself, that has appeal to wider society, or has some meaning to society in general. Now, certainly that's something you would be surveying your classmates for. You'd be looking at for a data set. So you need, again, your topic, a sentence or two about what you're hoping to prove, and then why that's important to you, because, and I leave that just as a filler. So this is a little example. Okay. And I'm looking at, again, this first internal assessment document on the OneNote. And I'll give you the form with the information on how to do that submission here in a minute. The second milestone is going to be to start our data collection. So you're going to design a survey or an experiment, or a sampling procedure if you're just pulling a data set that's pre-existing. So, if you're doing a survey, typically we want to use a Google form that allow you to export all that data directly into Excel. It's much easier than having to manually enter that data later on if you're trying to do a paper survey. Yuck. If it's data that already exists, I need the website or database where you found your data from. And then your sampling procedure, how you selected your sample from that data set. And then We've talked about sampling bias. So again, when you're creating, if you go the survey route, when you're writing your survey, you want to be careful about how you're writing your questions so that you're not directing the kind of responses you get. Like don't do like a multiple choice. Like everything needs to be a free response. Like if I ask how many hours of sleep did you get last night, I just wanted to leave a blank. Rather than giving you the option of like 0 to 2, 2 to 4. You don't want to pre-sort your data. You want to have the freedom to do that sort on your own and categorize it on your own to make up your own classes. It'll become next to impossible to do what we want to do without like the rawest of the raw data. In addition to that, if I'm asking for like hours of sleep, I might also give a direction to like ask the respondent to round to the nearest quarter hour, so I can get some 6.5s or some 6.7s or whatever to like, or 6.75s to like help spread my data out a little bit, just so I don't get like all like 4, 5, 6s. I want to give the option for some more responses. It'll help later on when we try to make our two-way table, if we're able to kind of have a little bit more freedom on how we want to group our data together to do some of the statistics. When you're asking, make sure you specify a unit. If I ask how much sleep did you get, and one person says 45 minutes and the other person says 6 hours, you're lucky if they put a unit on there for you. They probably won't. They'll probably put 4, and someone else will put 45, and you're like, how'd you get 45 hours of sleep last night? And they really mean 45 minutes. So make sure that, if it's something that can have a unit on there, you're telling them the unit you want the response in, and how you want them to round. You know what I mean? And then that data you're going to submit to me via email. And then that's going to get organized. You'll give me the raw data and your two-way table with your appropriate groups. And we'll go through how to do that as a class. We'll take a day, and once you've got your data, we'll do a day to, to do this data stuff together and do some of the calculation stuff together. Part 3 is just writing your introduction and submitting it. Part 4 is your calculations. So once you have your full data, we're going to submit an Excel sheet to me with your calculations on it, so I can check to make sure that what you did, that you did it correctly, basically, that you're getting the right numbers to come out. And we'll take a day in class and do some of the Excel stuff together, because I don't expect that many of you have a lot of experience using an Excel sheet to do stuff. But that's like a super valuable skill if you are planning to do anything quantitative, as a college major, to really use Excel. It's a nice learning piece. And then the rest of this describes actually the final, what you're going to write up. So this is all details about that. That's way ahead of, way past where we want to be at. So I'm not going to go through and read that terribly closely.
Does this not have any class final?
Correct. Yeah. Again, this is describing the project and like how to write the different parts and what to include in it. That part doesn't matter to you. This is the piece that you're looking for. So if I look at this is your part 1 submission instructions. So I want everybody to pay attention, because I'm going to be picky about this. So you're going to send me an email. Your subject line should be period 1 IB Math SLIA -part 1. If your subject does not read as this, I'm not going to count it. I'm not going to read it as a submission. And I won't approve, I will disapprove it just simply for the title. Okay? So make sure your subject in your email is titled correctly. Now, in your email, don't type it into an email. I want a Word document attached or a Google Doc. Make sure that your Google Doc is updated so that I can have permission to look at it. If it's not, it's just like I'm gonna not approve because I can't read it. You just go to the bottom of the list when you have to send your update back, okay? And then I'm also gonna be looking at the topics properly submitted. So again, to go back to this one where we had the example, you know, like independent variable, blah, dependent variable, blah, what you're trying to show, da 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 da. And then you have a reason that this topic is important to me because, like a paragraph worth of because. Don't skip on the because. Is everybody clear as to what I need from you guys? I will start accepting submissions right now. So if you want to spend some time here, you know, the next 20 minutes or so that we have left in class, you can start kind of thinking about that and getting those, you know, getting those going. If you have a great idea that you're like, yo, I want to get this in, you can get it in today. If you want to sit and think about it, that's okay. I want to point out to you guys that if you look at the our My Notre Dame page and we go to the announcement, if I look at the IA topics, again, I put the same description here, but I also have, you can view the topics you've already chosen. And if you click on that, that's just a link to my Google Doc that has who's taken what. You know, what topics will have already been selected. So if you're, you know, if you're late to the game or you've been sitting thinking for a while and you're like, well, let's see what at least I can't do, see what other people have already been approved on, you can go here and take a look. Does everybody feel okay about what to do here? I would say my hope for you guys is by what would be Tuesday next week would be our first class, is to have everybody having at least a submission in. Maybe not approved yet because I don't know how fast they'll be able to go through these things. But my hope would be that everybody will have a submission in at least once by Tuesday of next week. And if it's not approved, don't feel bad about it. You know, I'll just tell you, I'll give you the reason of what you need to do better. Everybody's okay? Feel good? So all the IA things I was showing to you were in the OneNote, in the IA section. So like that first is just like your overview.
I just forgot we did everything on OneNote.
Yep. Yeah, so I have it all in there for you, so it's all available to look at on your, you know, at your leisure. Everybody happy? Well, not happy that you have to do this thing, but like, doesn't sound maybe so bad that if we're going to do some of these parts in class at least, and we're already starting, and it's the final exam also, so like, I can stomach that if it means there's no final. And it's like one less thing to do. Okie dokie. Okay.